This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Warning. This episode contains imagery of drug abuse and graphic scenes. Listener discretion is advised. I'm Georgia, and welcome to Finding Hope, the podcast that swaps out the depressing news headlines for stories of hope that won't necessarily make the front page. Each episode, we meet someone who's had a bit of a hard road, but has found hope and healing along the way. And hopefully they inspire you to look for the good in your own life. Episode 18, Reverend Bill Crews. For most people, Christmas is a busy time filled with family, friends, presents, and lots of food. But for some, this season is simply another reminder of their loneliness and discomfort. Reverend Bill Crews has been serving and supporting people experiencing homelessness and social isolation for the past 50 years. Founder of the Exodus Foundation, he's been responsible for over 3 million meals to those in need across that time and 50 Christmas Day lunches for those needing somewhere to go. Bill is now in his late 70s. He's spent the majority of his life serving others, but it's also come at great personal cost. I couldn't think of a more fitting conversation in the lead up to Christmas and for the final episode of this season of Finding Hope. Let's meet Bill.
I'm Reverend Bill Crews. I grew up in a fairly normal, dysfunctional family in the western suburbs of New South. I was born in England, actually, but grew up there in the west of Sydney. Got a degree in engineering, did a whole lot of research into microelectronics and single crystal silicon, all that sort of stuff.
Look, I'm a scientist and I still have no idea what that means.
Ended up one day at the Sydney Domain listening to the speakers, and that led me to the Wayside Chapel in King's Cross, which led me to become involved with homeless and disadvantaged and troubled people of all sorts. This is in 1971, 50 years ago, and changed my life because I saw a lot of the people I've taken to the Royal Commission lately. They were being abused by priests and ministers and all these different sorts of people. And I thought, this is wrong. But nobody would listen, you know. Started getting really involved in the Wayside Chapel, then had an experience there which changed my life forever. I was walking up the stairs to run the coffee shop that night as a volunteer, and I got up, it was on the first floor, so I got up to the landing and all of a sudden time stood still, just bang, bang. Must have been a millisecond, but it felt like an age. There was kind of a voice, but it was a knowing. And it said, you got to leave your job, you got to come and work here, you've got to concentrate on the poorest of the poor. The work will be long and hard and arduous. You'll become well known, but don't worry about that. By the way, your personal life won't be that happy. And I knew it was true. I knew it was true because all these people who have, you know, that thunderbolt from the sky and God's changed my life and all that, it all ends up happy, you know? But this one said it's going to be long and hard and arduous and your personal life's going to suffer. And I thought, that makes it real. And I followed it. And I've spent the rest of my life trying to stay true to what happened.
So that was it, that moment you quit your job as an engineer and then...
Yep. They were really pissed off, to tell you the truth.
I'm sure they were.
And I said, I've got to go. I've got to do this. And it's took me 40 odd years to understand, because one of the things I do every week is psychotherapy. And I've learned everybody needs a good shrink, you know. And I've always pondered on that. I was saying, why me? Why did I get that? And finally, the psychotherapist broke out from not being directive and said, because the source behind the voice knew you'd carry it out.
Wow. Did you have a relationship with God before this?
What's happened since then is my life has been a gradual opening. It's not been boom, 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 boom. It's been, oh yeah, oh I get it. It's been kind of a long, gradual revelation, you know. And I was kind of dabbling in it before. Yeah, I was always of that bent, you know.
So Bill quit his job, just as this voice had told him, and he started working full-time at Wayside Chapel. And the difference he saw within himself was almost immediate.
The difference within months was remarkable. I can look back at writings I did and see the changes. And then it got to the point where it was time to move on. And I went and saw the moderator of the church and I said, where can I go? And he said, there's troubles at Ashfield. So I'd done my theological course and all that. And I thought, that's where I've got to go, somewhere really hard. So I came to Ashfield and there was nothing here, nothing. And the people kept saying, oh, you won't be able to recreate King's Cross in Ashfield. But I just opened the doors. And people started coming in. They started coming in. And all the different sorts of issues, and we just dealt with them as we did. And then somebody turned up who was a really good cook. We started cooking meals, and before long on a Monday night, we'd have 80 people. And then John Singleton ran all this money on the horses and said, what would you do if I gave it to you? I said, I'd open a soup kitchen. He said, call it Loaves of Fishes and here's the money. So we opened that. I was also still involved with homeless and runaway kids. So I opened the church up and we used to sleep, all the homeless kids, on the pews of the church. And it just took off from there. And I had, at that time, I then had 10 conservative Methodist ladies in my congregation who all wore hats to church and called one another miss, you know? And they became my aunts. And we did it all together. And I said to them, I said, you know, if you want a cup of tea and sandwiches, come up here and do that with the kids. I'll come and visit you if you're sick. But this is where the mission is. And they took them on. They took it all on.
They didn't need a whole bunch of convincing?
No, they said we were just a bunch of old fogies going out backwards. And now they got runaway kids, they got people out of jail, they got... and they loved it. They loved it. And it was just, it showed me there's a whole lot of bulldust that's said about conservative church people. And basically they're not, or a lot of them aren't. They just need to be opened up.
And so Bill and his group of aunties got to work, serving the community of Ashfield in Sydney. The Exodus Foundation, which is now known as the Reverend Bill Crews Foundation, was born, serving the marginalised and forgotten people from all walks of life. I think so many of us, myself included, are so protected from these struggles that we just don't understand the realities of some people's situations and lives. So I asked Bill what some major misconceptions of homelessness are.
Let me put it this way. People who have got nothing at all will give you everything. People who have got stuff to hold on to only give you part of themselves. I have seen that over and over and over again, that if you really want to know what people think of you, if you really want to get help, you really want to do this, talk to someone who's got nothing, because they'll give it to you. They'll give it to you. And that is awesome in its reality. And I often think of the church being like the rich young ruler, you know, who came to Jesus. And Jesus said, you've got to give everything you got away. And he went away disappointed. And I often think of the church as being like that, you know, that they can't give what they're called to give.
How can churches do that better?
Listen to the gospel. Listen to it. Not just listen to it, but do it. Do it. There's There's all this talk about word and deed, but I look on that like, where Jesus had the parable of the coin. You got God on one side and the emperor on the other, and he said, give to one and give to the other. But actually, he was saying it's all God's. And I think people will go around, throw their chests out and say, I am saved, blah, blah, blah. And they don't give a bugger about anybody else. It's actually doing the word, doing it. And doing it forces you to realise the depth of it, and the way it confronts really society itself. And people are afraid of that, and churches are afraid of that.
Does it frustrate you that, especially around Christmas time, there's all this talk of giving and Jesus is coming, but then on the flip side, there's this just massive consumerism and all about like just the busy period of so many people, and I think there is so much need at Christmas that just doesn't get met.
When I started here with the 10 old ladies, and I said, we've got to start doing a thing on Christmas Day for people, they said, but everybody's got somewhere to go on Christmas Day. I said, no, they haven't. They said, we'll be with our families. Everybody will be with them. I said, some people don't have families. And they gave me a plate of sandwiches and for Christmas Day, and 2 people turned up. The next time, 13 turned up. The next time, 11, and then the next time, 400. And it just took off. You got to do Christmas, not parade it. And what people don't realise is that, you can go up and say, oh, praise Jesus and all of that, he's come into the world and all of that. But it's actually about new hope coming into the world and new life coming into the world and giving of yourself coming into the world. That's what it's about. And I had a woman come a year before last. Her son had walked into a train and she said, I can't stand Christmas on my own. I just can't. What can I do? And I said, come here and work with people. We had another one where there's hundreds of stories, but a woman and her daughter came, and her daughter was about 5, and she came to the Christmas lunch, and in the middle of the lunch and all of that, the little girl threw the biggest tantrum, hissy fit, crying, screaming thing you could imagine. And what had happened had been that year, the little girl's father had been killed in a car crash before she was born. And at this Christmas Day, with all the thousands of people all around, she realised she would never, ever know her father. And out of nowhere came all these men. That's Christmas. It's not saying, praise God, Jesus is in the world. It is, but it's doing it. New hope comes out of the least expected places. That's what it's about. There was one old gal came, Christmas Eve, this old gal came, and she had a tiny plastic bag, and in the bag she had a tiny leg of lamb and a tin of peaches. And she said, I brought this for Christmas lunch. And what happened was every year she and her husband and her disabled son would sit around the kitchen table and have lunch on Christmas Day. And one year the little old man died, so she kept sitting with her son. Then the son died. So this Christmas she was on her own. And all the neighbours said, we're not going to leave her on her own, we're going to take her away. And I realised she was bringing me their Christmas lunch to share with everybody. That's Jesus coming into the world. That is it, not all the other stuff.
So this year, you'll be spending your 50th Christmas with the poor and lonely. And what can people expect for the event this year? I know that COVID has moved some stuff around for the past 2 years.
We're ready for every event from total lockdown to total open. And we've got, everybody will get, they can, if it's total open, we'll have all the tables and everyone will be sitting around and Father Christmas and music and all that sort of stuff. If not, there's a lovely takeaway box of a hot traditional Christmas lunch and all the fillings, and there's Christmas cake and all of that. They get that and they get a present and they get all of that sort of stuff. Whatever happens in whatever way, they'll do that. And we got jugglers and we got people entertaining, all of that. It's a marvellous event, you know, I just sit back and watch. And basically people minister to each other. There was one time a man turned up here who had no arms. And so two lovely old ladies served him Christmas lunch with a spoon, you know. And he thanked them by telling them funny little off-colour jokes, you know. And they'd be giving him the meal and he'd be telling them all this stuff. Now they'd be all tittering away, you know. Stuff like that. It'd be 50 men turning up out of nowhere for a little kid. It'll be all these countless acts that go on of people just reaching out to, it's an excuse to reach out to one another.
Apart from Christmas Day, what other support, what other work does the Bill Crews Foundation do?
We work with kids in trouble. We've got 11 locations our food vans go to. We've got 3 Loaves and Fishes restaurants now. All of that goes on. We work with traumatised kids, all of that. And but basically, I like to think we're a sign that if everybody did this, the world would be a better place. I think we try and be a sign so that somebody, our chef will say, oh, the big thing about here is getting the meals out every day and more meals. And someone will say, we got to do more and more to help kids and all that. And I'll say, yes. But the main thing is we're a sign. We're a sign that the world isn't an awful place, or it doesn't have to be an awful place. It can be a better sort of place.
Bill has worked tirelessly for over 50 years to serve the people that often fall by the wayside. He's made an incredible impact, but it hasn't come without a cost. Bill, you said at the start of this that this voice, this source said to you that this work will be incredible, but, you know, your personal life would be hard. Have you had a hard life, would you say?
Oh, yeah. It's not been easy all the way through because, you know, we've all got our weaknesses and it's not easy. And it's also, at times, the hierarchies of the church don't understand what we're on about. So they get anxious, you know. And it's living in the messy. It's living in the mess. And most people don't want life to be messy, but it is. And living in the mess is uncomfortable in extreme. When someone comes here who's working here and it's all tough and hard and whatnot, I say, suck it up, because that's what life's about. Life is messy. And yet we don't want that to happen. So people will come along and say, Bill, I'll fix up the mess for you. But all they do is they drive the people in need away.
Would you say you're happy?
Happy. I'd say I'm content. I'd say I'm working on a whole lot of issues in my life that I want to clean up. I'm very moved by the 12-step movement, you know, and I was one day with a girl who was, there was a crowd of 100 here, and she sat and she said, you know, I came from a very good home and I found myself in the middle of the night shooting up heroin in a public park using public toilet water. And she told everybody that. And I thought, that is really brave, really brave. That's the way to live. And so I'm trying to live that way. I do a lot of meditation And I meditate a lot on gratitude, and I'm realising a lot of the people that have got in my way in life I should be grateful to. And so I'm one by one doing gratitude to them. We like to read the words of Jesus, but we don't like to really understand their full implications. We really don't. And we like to say we do those things, but often we don't. You know, when he talks about the kingdom being now, he means it. I've seen those stories of Jesus come to life here. I think there's a joy in my life, which means I can cope with the ups and downs. I work a lot with refugees, and I was in Calais, France, because they try to get to England, and I saw a sign which said NA meeting tonight, and I thought I'll go to that. This is in the jungle, in a huge refugee camp. And in that group were maybe a dozen men and women, all different nationalities and colours, mainly Muslim, all addicted to heroin, all trying to get to England, all trying to get off heroin. And I thought I'll sit with them. And in the NA tradition, they go from person to person to person. And it got to me. And I thought, what am I going to say? I'm not an addict. I said, I'm Bill from Australia. And then it all poured out. I said, I'm Bill from Australia. I said, I've had 2 stuffed marriages, I said, and I've had a hard life, I said, and this has happened to me and that's happened to me, and I'm making my relationships with my kids better again and all of this sort of stuff. It all poured out. And all of them got up and they held me. And they gave me my life back, you know. They gave me my life back. And they were the poorest of the poor. They were refugees, they were Muslims, they were drug addicts, and they gave me my life back. And that's the message of Jesus. Without what's happened, I'd still be back there angry at the world. And without the whole of the 50 years, I wouldn't be anywhere near what I am now and have the experiences I've had.
Wise words from Bill, and something we can all reflect on this Christmas season. And now a final word of wisdom from both Bill and his very wise friend, who you may have heard of once or twice.
I don't know if you know, I'm a great friend of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and we sit and talk a lot. And how he can forgive the Chinese government for what they've done to the Tibetan people, I don't know, but he can. It just knocks me out. So we often sit and talk. And one day we were talking and I said, look into my eyes. So we looked in one another's eyes and I said, did you notice how when we were looking in each other's eyes, we vanished? And I said, I think that's what Jesus was talking about the kingdom of God. And he goes, oh, and he called one of his lackeys. So it was just me and his lackey. And he brought back this crystal, the lackey did. And the Dalai Lama painted a cross on it in black and gave it to me and said, take this as a gift from the Holy Spirit. Because I've learned that the more deep you go into your own religion, the more respect you have for people who go deeply into theirs. And you might end up at different points, but in a way you end up in the same spot. And that I find really moving.
Thank you so much to Reverend Bill Crews for sharing his story so vulnerably and courageously, and challenging me to think about how I spend this holiday. I hope the conversation did the same for you as well. To find out more about Christmas Day at the Reverend Bill Crews Foundation, the information is in the show notes. Well, that officially marks the end of Season 1 of Finding Hope. It has been such an honour getting to have these conversations and bring them to you each and every week. Thank you to everyone who has listened, given feedback, and shared this podcast with friends over the last 4 and a bit months. Thank you also to Derek Yo for providing amazing sound production and music for all of the episodes that you hear, as well as being a wonderful support in getting this podcast off the ground. Finding Hope will be back with more great conversations early next year, But in the meantime, have a wonderful Christmas and holiday season and stay safe. I'll leave you with this verse. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. John 1, verses 4 to 5. Catch you next time.
know you can feel all of the magic tonight, turning the distance into a new kind of love. 'Cause with family and friends, oh, the love never ends. It's our season where Christmas is ours. Presents are nice, but the real gifts inside. This is Christmas, so Merry Christmas to us.
This is a Hope 1032 production. Thanks for listening.